Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. We're your hosts. I'm Sybil Amuti.
And I'm Brandis Daniel.
And before we jump into this week's episode of the podcast, make sure you sign up for our newsletter at
thegreatgirlfriends.com.
And don't forget to leave us an amazing iTunes review.
Yes, that is the payment for listening to this podcast.
I love it. 5 stars all the way. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
And we have with us
KJ Rose.
Yes! You better sing your name. I love it.
You better sing your name.
You better sing your name. Sing your name.
You better come on. Don't get me started.
Okay, so I just want to let the Great Girlfriends know, just literally seconds before this recording, my energy had dropped to a 2 because I had just gotten a really just not happy text. We logged on to Skype and you took me well past 10 with your energy and your fire and your light.
That means a lot. Amen. Thank you.
You brought so much. You made me so ready to learn more about your story and yes, I'm telling you. First of all, I want everybody to run to Instagram real quick. Before you get your pen and paper, get on Instagram, and it's at KJ Rose Effect.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
At KJ Rose Effect. Follow her and just let her eyes just light you up, just in that smile. Just let it happen to you, and then it'll all make what I'm saying will all make sense.
Amen. Amen. That's very sweet. Thank you.
So Great Girlfriends, we're so excited to have you guys hear about KJ Rose's story, because I actually just witnessed your story over Instagram. I met you years ago when you were living in New York, but I'm just like, your transformation is one of those that makes me curious. It's like, I'm like, I know there's so much to her story. We have got to get her story on the Great Girlfriends.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And like I said, I have been admiring you and you all's podcast for some time. And so I remember when we were sitting in a furniture store and you were telling me that you were about to quit your job and start this new venture and journey. And so to see how it has, just the trajectory of it all,
Bold
that's inspired. Yes. Yes, exactly. So just to see now how it went from an idea to a full-blown service business, because I believe you are a vessel, and the reason that you are exploding is because you're serving others and their talents and their gifts, and it'll just kind of keep going from there. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we love to ask our great girlfriends this story. We love to have you finish this. There was once a girl named KJ Rose.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Over.
There was once a girl named KJ Rose that began as Kiana. I grew up in Chicago, where it was very pragmatic. You go to grammar school, you go to high school, you go to college, you get married, and then you come on back home and you have some kids. And so I dared to kind of do something a little bit different. I mean, in Chicago, you don't have, Broadway. You definitely have the School of Arts and things of that nature, but I was never really part of that. So for me, the artists that I loved were, I'm going to date myself, dang it, Anita Baker and Stephanie Mills and so it was like Toni Braxton. And so for me, that seemed like such a huge feat to think that I was going to be a singer. I love to sing, but I didn't think it constituted me having a singing career. So I go to FAMU, Florida A&M University. Come on, somebody. All right. And then, and so it was while I was there that the Delta Sigma Theta, grabbed me and they said, we want you to sing here. And I was like, because I could hum a tune, but it didn't. And out of all my friends, maybe I hummed the tune the best. But to me, it still didn't mean I should be a singer. It just meant out of these 5, I might be the best. And so they were like, okay, we want you to sing at this event. And so, they really weren't asking. So I performed at the event. And it became something, because I have stage fright, which is so very interesting. I think that's why I had such a desire to help emerging artists to really find their voice and find their light and really implement some tools in which to just be able to share their gifts. And so Fast forward, I went to New York, and then I worked for Pfizer by day and in corporate compensation, don't ask. And then I sang by night, open mics. Ron, who just passed, bless his soul, he allowed me a platform every week at Blue Angel, at Chaz and Wilson's, at the Underground, where I could just go in the midst of my fear and just keep getting back up there. So the first thing I learned is, for me, it was going to be repetition to get where I needed to go. It wasn't that the fear dissipated. It was just, I kept doing it over and over again. Yeah. And there was someone that believed that I had a gift to do it. And so that's where I formed relationships with like Carl Thomas and Kelly Price and Faith. And those guys were just getting up there every day, just effortlessly. And so it was Carl that really took me under his wings. From that point, I want to say I got a call in the 90s to go on the road with Puff. So I met Kelly Price, chance meeting in a studio. I had all these bags. I think I was just leaving Macy's, but I live in Brooklyn. And then the studio was like on 57th Street. So, I was like, I'm good. Like when somebody invited me, I was like, I'm good on this. Like I got stuff. I'm getting on the train. And that was kind of like one of my first lessons in what can happen by just showing up.
Yes.
And so this guy named Eric Payton introduced me to Kelly. I never sang for Kelly. We just had kindred spirits. The next week, I got a call from her saying, do you want to go on tour with Puffy, P. Diddy?
Wow.
And I was like, okay. I called my mom. I said, hey. She was like, well, what about your stock options? And I was like, what? No, this is of a lifetime. And, I was like, I have a degree. I'll get another one. But for her, that was the conservative thinking. That was the pragmatic thinking. And so went on tour, and just to be able to get paid for what you do and love, to me was just something so fascinating. I just hadn't really been exposed to that. But I hadn't totally jumped to the other side. So when the tour was over, I was like, ooh, glad I got my job back. Went back to Pfizer, worked another 4 years, and I just got to a point where I felt like I wasn't seeing 100% of rewards in any one area because I wasn't giving 100% to any one area. I was splitting the focus between this 9 to 5 where they wanted me to just kind of rise in the ranks, and then my music career where I just wasn't seeing any fruits of the labor that I was putting in. And so I was like, well, maybe I should just focus on one. So I didn't have anything lined up. I just gave my 2-week notice. Within that 2 weeks, I felt like God was waiting to see if I was going to take a chance on myself first. Within that 2 weeks, I got a call to go to Europe with Puff. Wow. And I was like, here we go. And I just really think, one of the things, I'm going to jump around. Before I moved to LA, I met with Devon Franklin. I had to come out here for a month. Bevy connected me with Devon Franklin. And I said to him, I'm trying to figure out what the system is that says that it's time to leave New York and go to LA. Do I wait till I get the best job to move? Do I go back to New York, send my resume to get the job? I just didn't know what the best route was going to be. And he said, well, that's not how God works. If he told you to move, then you move. You don't wait for him to show you his hand. And then you have to make your decision. So that's, and so that idea of just jumping from Pfizer, and I didn't even know I was doing that then. So went to Europe with Puff. It was the best decision, the best experience ever. And I think that with my stage fright, standing in the background and singing and really learning from someone else's expense, what works, what doesn't work, was really great for me. And so I want to say after like the 3 months, we landed back in LA. We came back to LA, and then Carl Thomas's album took off, and then I went on the road with him. And then I sang I Wish about 500 times. I Wish, Summer Rain, Emotional. And it was like
everyone did, KJ, because that album was just killer. We all played that thing over and over. So kudos to you.
Those were good times. But, it's interesting because my first real professional job as a background singer was with Heavy D. So I sang background for this song called Big Daddy. So it's like, I want your body the way you touch me. Driving in your caddy, you can be my Big Daddy.
Oh my God! Yes! Yes!
I knew if I could go, maybe it would click. I was saying, actually, I really think you should go into acting. Like, you should really do more. And I was just like, all right. And then I got a call to be on Biggie's album. And so I did a song called Player Hater for his album. And then it was just like all these rappers before singing rappers became a thing.
Right.
And so, and so actually one of the other lessons that I learned early on is that, I'll tell the story. I had gotten a call to be in Heavy's video, but I lived in New York. The video was happening in LA. And so we flew here on our own dime. And I was like, yes, I'll get a feature. I'll do something. Because they didn't expect for that to be a single. Again, I got that call living in Brooklyn, 11 something at night. We just need a voice. I don't think they were looking for me. They didn't know they were looking for me. And so that ended up being one of the singles. So it was only right that they were going to do a video. So I show up there and I think I just got caught in the crossfires of like politics between the person that invited me and the team. And they were basically like, oh, well, there's nothing for her to do in this video while I was in LA in the rain, standing on the lot. And so I left crying in the rain, went back to the hotel, flew back out. Like, I just don't understand. My little feelings were hurt. I get a call a week later. Hev wants to do a remix. Can you come in? Now, my first thought was absolutely not. Kick rocks. And then I was like, okay, but then he'll just call somebody else. So it's like, it ain't personal. And I had to learn that very early. Like, this would be a missed opportunity if you sat over here thinking that you were entitled. That was a bonus.
Yeah.
You already got the blessing. So it was, for me, understanding that none of this business is personal. And in fact, we were able to build a solid relationship from that next visit with him, next encounter. And so it showed me a lot. Like, I could sit over here and pout, or I could show up. But it's funny because when I showed up, I was like, I'm not having no extra conversations. We are not friends. I am just doing what I'm put here to do. And then it just, his personality will warm and melt you every time anyway. And so we ended up being friends after that. And so that was like another great lesson for that. So moving forward to after Carl Thomas, I was like, okay, this is great. But now I think I want to go on a pop tour. So I lightly stalked Britney Spears people. Like, I don't mean no harm, but we're going to have a conversation.
Right.
I finished lightly stalked. And so I remember Jeff Sledge was he was the only executive I knew at Jive at the time. And so I was trying to get through to him, but he was always busy. And I would always say hello to the assistant, but I never went beyond that. And one day we just had a conversation and I was like, look, I'm just trying to get to Britney Spears. Why won't he just call me back? And he was like, oh, my friend is the music director. My friend is the tour manager. So send me your stuff. And I was just like, oh, okay. The tour manager sent it to the music director. And before I know it, I call him. We're talking. I'm like, he'll pick up the phone. I'll be like, hello, is it me you're looking for? And he's like, oh. And he was like, look, I'm going into it. So I had missed the audition in LA by this time. And so I think he was now in Florida and Nashville, just kind of doing this nationwide search. And I would call him every couple of days, like, hey, happy Tuesday. Did you find what you were looking for? Hey, happy Thursday. Just checking on in. And then I'd be like, hey, I was about to get on the train. Were you going to call me? He was like, no. His name is Skip. Love him. So finally, he was like, his last name is not Dillard. But we're just going to say Skip because I can't remember his last name. But finally, he called me back. He said, look, I have never given anyone a job like this over the phone, but it is yours if you want it. Wow. And I realized at that moment that tenacity will speak before talent. Persistence will speak before people can see your talent. And that is what began an additional chapter of this journey of touring with Britney Spears, traveling the world, and just knowing that I'm sure there was somebody that could have outsang me, but they weren't going to outwork me. And I just, that it was about relationship first. And that's all. I was like, I want this job. This is mine. And so for it to just come to fruition when it was just a matter of courting him for like months, and then from there, Britney and Justin Timberlake at one point had the same management. And so I think they loved the way I worked, showed up on time. And I really took it seriously. So then Justin Timberlake hired me to do spot dates. And then from there, I worked with Janet Jackson. And that was like one of the biggest, I want to say, like opportunities of my singing career, to go from knowing that I'm going to sing Pleasure Principle along with her in rehearsal because that's my song, and Rhythm Nation, just like having been such a fan for so long, and now in rehearsal, like sometimes it was hard for me to concentrate because I'm trying to do the dance moves. It was just like, I was like, okay. But then after a while, as great as it was, I think you start to realize that something that was initially a learning experience has now become a hiding place. So as great as it was, I just realized that the learning curve was starting to diminish. But you ride on the title, it's just like, oh yeah, we're with Janet. Oh yeah, we're with Janet. But that's Janet. You don't have nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? And so it was just like, okay, your career is predicated on when someone else works.
Yes.
And how do you want to do that? So if their album doesn't do well, you're left looking for another background gig. And I was like, okay, this is great, but I'm going to have to take a chance on myself. And the alternative for a singer is the options are not great. You don't want to really go, if you tour in the world as a singer, to go now kind of be in corporate America or be in a confined workspace, it definitely doesn't feed the soul. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to work on my album, and then I'm going to work at J Records. At night, I'll be the nighttime receptionist. And I was like, okay, I can do this. So that allowed me to kind of enter into both worlds. After a month or two there, they were like, well, can you work for Clive Davis directly? And I was like, no. I'm good. I like my time. I like where I am. I don't like nobody all trying to tell me, what to do and control my time. And they were like, all right, well, you should think about it. And the more I thought about it, I said, no matter what field I decided to go into, the lessons and just observing him and the gems that I could get from that would be invaluable.
Absolutely.
So I became his assistant for about a year and a half, and I was, and there were menial tasks a lot of times besides scheduling. It was like pouring him some tea or cutting some apples. And I'm like, for every apple I slice, we gonna have a conversation. So I didn't say this aloud, but it was I was determined. So I'd bring in my little apple. And if I saw that he was available, I said, hey, Mr. Davis, I was thinking about this single and why you chose this as a single and why you think this person is a star. And, I'll pack up his bag at night and I'd walk him to the elevator. And I was like, hey, so I got your book and I got some questions. And he was always very willing to just, give me information and knowledge. And so he was involuntarily my mentor on some levels. And I was just like, okay, this is good stuff. But after a while, the more I stayed there, the less I thought that they could see me as an artist. So I went back out with Janet. And then I was like, okay, for real this time, I'm going to put out my album. And I think I had been working on an album for maybe 10 years. And it was one of those things where, I think when you go into A&Rs and you sit and you have these meetings, they're adjusting you. They're saying, oh, change that, or I think this is better. And you find yourself shifting so much that you don't even know who you are as an artist. So it's like, I kept trying to reach this level of perfection. So I remember this guy named Rhymefest who was signed to Jay at one point. He's from Chicago. He was like, when are you putting out your album? And I was like, well, I'm not putting it out. Like, it's got to perfect. And he was like, well, you're only as perfect as this moment. Why don't you allow yourself something to grow from? You can't have a second album without a first album. And then if you are reaching for perfection, then there's no room to grow.
Right.
And so all of those points, my brother, Ajax, was very inspiring and just encouraging of like, sis, you got what it takes. But I think I was measuring myself against other people when I really should have just been validating myself where I was in that moment, and just having a level of freedom. So went to work for Sundance TV. I know I was everywhere as a temp. I was supposed to go there for 2 weeks. Let me get some money. Then I go to the next temp job, and ended up there for 5 years.
Wow.
I think it was because they really championed the independent artist. So they allowed me to perform at the Sundance Film Festival. They used my voice on shows. They put me in branded entertainment interstitials. And so I was like, okay, well, this allows me to gain a new skill set. I utilized every department in there. Marketing helped me with my slogan. Begin a seed, emerge a rose. Creative services helped me put together the digital audio book. So I was like, if you are in reach, I'm walking over there, we gonna talk. And that's how my album came to be. And it was called The Rose Effect. It was A Better Way was the single. And the name of the album was called All Heart, No Regrets. And so put out the album, I toured on the weekends. And I just felt like it was finally a chance where I felt that I completed the assignment. I didn't know where it was going to land. I released myself from the end result of getting signed and just said, at least make all of the time that you've spent and the people that have served on this project feel like you didn't just drop the ball. Complete the assignment and then you can move on from there. And so after I toured, I was like, okay, well, I'm good. I really don't need 5 albums to be an artist. And so labels started asking me to help their artists with performance, with stage presence, with connectivity, because they had the vocal ability, but it was like, how do you now tell a compelling story?
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, this is a shift, but let me make sure that I'm not doing performance development in lieu of singing not working. Because then you're just a bit coach. You're like, if I was you, I'd do it this way.
Right.
And so I remember like parents saying to me, oh, you're so good. Why didn't you make it? And that used to crush my little spirit. And then I was like, did I give it up? Did I give up too soon? I started thinking about that and if I had really just kind of failed at it until I got to a point where I knew that God was saying to me, the singing was for a season to inform the coaching. And you ain't got to just be one thing. Don't box yourself.
Right.
And allow other people to do it. And so in that, now my rebuttal was, oh, I did make it. Maybe you just missed it. And I can say that with, very strong conviction,
Yes.
And so started working for labels, started helping with stage presence. And I was like, okay, this is good. But I still had a 9-to-5 and I couldn't see my way out of it. And so I came to LA. I sang in a film for Tridust. We all went to college together. Indy Brown is the founder of that. And so it was the first time while I'm singing on stage. It's funny because I thought maybe the only reason I was still in New York was because I was supposed to get married. Now, I'd already been married. We can talk about that. That's another podcast. Okay? And so I was like, maybe I'm just supposed to have children because I didn't feel like I was thriving. However, there was like this badge of honor of, well, I live in New York. I mean, this is the best it's going to be. And, I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back to Chicago. So I didn't really think that anything else would work. I didn't think moving was a possibility for me. But as I'm sitting, so then I broke up with the guy that I thought that the Lord was sending me to be with so that I could stay in New York. And I remember being on stage and I sang, God is a good God. So I probably just cried before I got up on the stage. And I was like, God is a good God. And they were like, yes, he is. But the choir was like, I think she's for real. Like, I did 10 takes. But each time, I was like almost crying. And I was like, God, because that I had to get it out. Right. They were like, all right, cut.
I am hollering over here.
Yeah. And it was like this feeling of, so the cast is part of the audience of this scene. And Valerie Pettiford, love her, was sitting in the audience. And afterwards, I went over to her. I said, thank you for, giving me so much just spirit-filled response. And she was like, no, you blessed my soul. And I was like, oh, okay, I need some more of this. Maybe LA is where it is. Maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. I went back, I told my boss, I said, hey, I love working at Sundance, but I'm thinking about going to LA for a month. And he was like, his name's Alan Klein and Vanessa Benfield. They were like, well, what do you want us to do with the job? And I was like, maybe you could just hold it. I'm gonna be back. And he was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, well, I don't have any more vacation time, so I'll just take it unpaid. And he was like, you could take it as sick. And I was like, oh. I was like, okay. I was like, well, another thing. I was like, well, I have a few meetings, but he was like, I'll book you some more. I was like, So I felt the whole time God was waiting for me to take a chance on myself. It was always available.
Yes.
And so I just think about everything that I would have missed out on, not healing and being, I think caring, yielding, and being obedient to what he was trying to open to me. Had I held on to singing, because this is all I know, this is what I've done, I've worked so hard, and not even listened to the coach in me, then I think I would have just been kind of banging my head on something that was never meant for me. And so it was with that, I went to LA. I came to LA for a month. Maybe I had 7 meetings confirmed. By the time I left, I'd had 20-something encounters.
Wow.
And one thing that Chicago and New York will do for you, it will armor you with the level of hustle and tenacity like no other.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I was rolling up, So I was rolling up in buildings, calling the people like, hey, so I'm in the lobby. Should I come up or you want to come down? But this is going to happen. I don't know how you want to do it, but it's going to happen. And it was just, I think that fire, in a place that's a little bit more laid back, was not expected. And so some of the meetings, so one was with Disney, and I had just kind of cold called. I just went to the freaking Google and I said, who's in casting? I called the assistant. I said, I'd like to meet with all your bosses. And I said it so that she would think that she was going to be missing out on something if she didn't at least tell them. I was like, hey, so I'm coming to LA. Hey, let me just meet with your bosses. Just give them a call. Tell them the KJ called. And I would reach back out and I'd be like, hey, so I'll be there in like 2 weeks. Just wanted to check on in to see if there were any new developments. She was like, okay, KJ, we'll keep you posted. Hey, I'll be there in a week. Just checking in. In the meantime, I had found the same assistant, Aaron David, I found him on LinkedIn. And I said, yo, you used to work for Disney. He was like, that was 4 years ago. I only know one person there. And I was just like, that one person is perfect. I don't care who it could have been. It could have been a janitor.
Right.
Put me with the one person. That led to a meeting at Hollywood Records. She said, I love what you do, but by the time the talent gets from the channel over to the record label, they're already kind of well-oiled machines. So let me call my friends at the channel. Everybody at the channel that she knew was the person or the people that the assistant worked for. So now they're being hit twice. So I go from barely getting a response back to, we'd like you to meet with 6 of our executives.
Wow.
And I was like, Lord, I only needed 1. I needed 1. I don't need 6. And so I just prepared myself. And that's when I had the meeting with Devon, and he reset my posture, because it was less of me holding on to every word that people were saying that would be my sign that LA was the place to be.
Right.
And more of, I'm coming anyway. Regardless of what you say, I'm coming. Yeah. I just want to share with you that I have a service available to you.
Yeah.
And that, I think people can smell this desperation. People can smell when you haven't pre-approved yourself.
Yes.
You from them, or you're asking permission to be here.
Yes.
And it's just, it reset me. So I went in, they were all sitting on one side. I remember going before that with my aunt to Michael Beckwith's church as well. And he said, ask God to set the atmosphere before you walk in.
Yes. Ooh, that's
and so I prayed on that before I went in. And I had creative decks. I had agendas, creative decks. I passed out everything to everybody. And they were like, oh, I said, oh, yeah, this is going to happen. This is happening. And so he said, so in talking, they were like, okay, this is ridiculous. Some people should go on the side where she's sitting. And no, just to kind of break it up. And so we were talking midway through. They said, you should meet our president of casting. She came in, I talked some more, and I was really sharing my story. I wasn't asking for anything.
Right.
I was actually saying, how can I serve you guys? How can I be of value to what you're doing? And before I knew it, they were like, look, we don't know how to utilize you right now, but let's kind of percolate on it, and we'll get back to you. That was, I want to say, September of 2014. They brought me out here to work with one of their artists or talents on a show, November of 2014. I moved January of 2015. They called me to work on 2 shows as an on-set performance coach in February of 2015. So it just started to expand, and I didn't even know there was a such thing as like on-set performance coaches, because the obvious coaches are the acting coach, the dance coach, choreographer, the I would say the speech coach. So this was a new kind of I think concept that people had to kind of get used to. And so I was like, okay, Lord, we about to do it. Then I saw that BET was about to do Chasing Destiny, and I was like, oh, I need to be on this show. Oh, that has my name all over it. So again, lightly stalked Stephen Hill from BET and Gatson, who was the creative director for Beyonce. And I was like, hey, I think you guys should consider me as a performance coach on this. Now, Frank had only known me through one lens, and that was as a vocalist. So sometimes it's not personal. Like, it was not his job to now see me differently. It was my job to make sure that he did. And so every time I saw Happy Monday, just checking in. Happy Wednesday, did you find what you were looking for? Let me show you some other ways that I can be of benefit on this show. I stalked from June of 2015 until they just were worn down by January of 2016. And I was like, come on, just come and meet Kelly. And I was like, all right then. I go in, I meet Kelly. They throw me in with the girls really quickly, like, KJ, take it away. I do what I do. Kelly said, I need this for myself. Frank said, you do know what you're talking about. Can you come back tomorrow? I go back the next day thinking it'll be kind of the same type of behind the scene situation. I walk in. They say, is somebody going to mic KJ? I said, well, who is Mike? Because I don't have on any lashes. I don't have on any, I don't have the lip for TV. This is lip, for person to person, but this is not lip for TV. And nobody cared, girl. They had mic'd me, and I was like, okay, this is happening. Wow. And I remember seeing 3 chairs in the room. All the girls were in front. And my math was correct. Like, there were 3 of us. However, I'll never forget that my pastor, Pastor Taylor, Inglewood, New Jersey, said, don't invite yourself to the table. You wait to be summoned. And so I stood in the back because I'm not going to be played on reality TV. Okay, nobody going to be like, that ain't where you sit.
Right.
So I was like, I'm just going to stand back here. And then Kelly turned around and said, KJ, this seat is for you. And I was like, okay, this is happening. Wow. And so that was like my first on-camera experience as a performance coach. And it was, to me, a sign that you always have to stay ready.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, after you start, they just continue to prepare it and be ready. It's funny because the first 7 seconds, I am like adjusting myself because nobody gave me a glance over. They ain't looking at me to fix my makeup. So I was like, is my bra showing? What's happening? And my friends were like, what are you doing? I was like, I was trying to get it together. And so from there, I got a call from E! Entertainment to be on Revenge Body, which is Khloe Kardashian's show, to do the same thing. And I was just like, okay, there's a place for me here.
This is happening, right? You were thinking
and
you were at a place where you were like, this is it. There are so many things in your journey that honestly, me and Sybil, like we can't stop you because we're getting so much from just hearing your journey and hearing the tenacity If you had to say, and right now I know you're like you just did casting for what's the name of the show on BT?
I did. It's called The Family Business. It's Tridescent Studios, Trey Haley, and Greg Anderson, and Indy Brown, and Veronica Nichols. They are the producers of it. And I went to school with Indy Brown, so I've seen her journey just expand. And so just to be part of something where you saw the inception of it all, you know, come to life. Been beautiful. And here's the thing, I really was just helping out initially. You know, I was like, I got my own thing. I'm gonna just send you some people because I started a course, an artist development class called ADP out of, complete fear because again, I don't even like public speaking. Okay. I really wanted to write down everything and just give it to them. But this guy named Dustin Felder said, I really think there's a gap between people declaring that they are this performer and then actually being able to execute. And I think you can narrow that gap. And I was just like, all right, well, I'll try. So he brought me to the open house and he was like, look, I can talk about, you know, the love that I have for being an acting coach all day and blah, 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 blah. But I'm going to bring out KJ Rose. And I come up and I said, I can't talk about this all day. I was not born to do this. What you see standing before you are me having implemented tools in which to fuel me in the midst of my trepidation. It doesn't mean it's not here. Mm-hmm. It's just that I figured out how to navigate it. And people signed up for the class, girl. I was like, oh, dang, I got to teach it now.
Wow.
So, and it just strengthened me, you know, it just helped me to see that every artist. So now I transited from just the singer, and now I'm working with actors and dancers and executives. And so that's where I was pulling my pool of talent from. Because I'm like, as a coach, your job will become obsolete if you can't provide platforms in which they can now use this work.
Yeah.
So that's how it started, you know, in the casting. I was bringing all my people in. And then after a while, they started building stronger relationships. And they were like, okay, we need you to really do this. We like how you treat our supporting cast. We like how you treat our background. And for me, I was like, well, I want to provide an experience that they know that we're all in this together. Ain't nobody just automatically, you know, come and see themselves as a lead. They started from somewhere. Everybody started as a supporting cast. Mm-hmm. I just like to have, inclusive moments. And so they were like, let's do this full time. So we did that. And we did Throwback Holiday, which just aired on BET on Saturday. So I think I've seen some really great moments. Like one guy I hired from Breakdown Express, and he said, well, can you look at my brother? You know, he's a twin. Can you hire him as a bodyguard too? And I was like, well, if y'all twins, I got you already. I'm good. And so something just told me to just like talk to the producers about it. And so once I did that, they were like, well, bring them in. And they had such a great work ethic, and they were just willing to just to do whatever we needed them to do, that the writer, Carl Weber, wrote them into the show.
Wow.
And now they have they're hemming people up in alleys. And so they attribute that to me. And I just see how in this, again, it's bigger than me. I am just a mere vessel. And I just ask every day for the obedience so that I could hear like what the new assignment is. Yeah, and so I never saw myself casting, although it is a bit adjacent to coaching. But, you know, I don't want to confuse people either. But I do know in this season, I'm being used.
I love it.
As a vessel for that.
This story time has been so powerful because you layered it with so many levels of growth, tenacity, strength, resilience, fear, audacity, courage, joy, ambition, everything that was layered in. And you spoke specifically to me, that's why we got to get on the phone next week. But we have just in so many ways. But I think what I want for our great girlfriends to recognize is that KJ's story, your story is unique to you, but every single one of us has the ability to write and craft our story if we dare do it. And so you dared to do it, and you dared to allow the story to evolve, and you partner with God to co-create. And now you're sitting here with conviction around the fact that this journey was meant for you. Sometimes when you're in a journey, you don't think it's meant for you, and you'll be like, I need a lifeline. Get somebody come get me out of this thing. But retrospectively looking and speaking, we can speak with conviction when we get to a certain point in our journey, because we understand that those milestones were meant for us, no matter how painful, how confusing, or how afraid we were. So I want to thank you. I know you have to get to the airport, but I want to thank you for allowing our great girlfriends into that story, because I feel like you can go back and replay through her story and hear so many places where you personally, great girlfriend, may have felt like it was time to make a move, but unclear, and felt like a job was beneath you.
Whoop, hello.
But still understanding that you can walk with Clive Davis to the elevator and secretly get mentored.
Right.
Along
secretly getting
preparing you.
Exactly.
Propelling you as well. So saying that to say they're going to be chasing you down if they're not at KJ Rose Effect. But do you have a website where they can keep up with you, KJ?
Yes.
Okay,
it's roseeffect.com. Just roseeffect.com. Yeah. Awesome. And hopefully, okay, so I'm going to say this aloud, because once you say it, then you've got to do it. In my mind, I've always felt like there needed to be a tangible solution. Like I recently spoke in London and Ireland to some vocalists, and I wasn't able to leave them with anything. I'm trying to shock systems, but I couldn't leave them with anything. So I am working on a workbook that would really help. And I'm not going to give no dates, maybe in the new year. Because for me, I'll just give like more story. In the album I wrote called A Better Way during my most, I think, paradoxical of times. I'll say that. It was the greatest sadness, but there was a level of freedom that came along with it, because I was going through a divorce. And so, I put A Better Way on the album. I just completed it. And then I just kind of was like, okay, I took it off of iTunes after it'd been up for some time. And I was like, okay, on to the next. And then I get a call from OWN that they want to use that single for Queen Sugar. And I was just like, oh. And so for me, it said, no, here's the thing. When the music supervisor asked me for music, I was like, everything I have is too old. I didn't even want to send it to him. I dismissed it.
Wow.
I was like, no. Let me send you some new work. I mean, I've arrived. I'm better. Let me just write you something new. I have so much more perspective. They were like, can you just send what you have right now? And A Better Way was used it was written from a space of disappointment, of sadness, and they put it in a scene of honor and power and love. So again, it was being redefined. The original reason I wrote the song had now been redefined, but it said to me, number one, stop disqualifying ourselves. And it also said to me, complete the assignment. Detach yourself from the end result of it. And just, if you have an idea, whether it's a poem or a script or anything creative, or just following through on something, complete it, because you never know where it would land. I did that song in 2008. I got the call for OWN for Queen Sugar in 2016. So it was kind of like, what we think has been time that is no longer regarded as important, God can make up for seconds.
Come on.
And minutes. And still make it relevant.
Yes.
And so I was posting about it, and people were like, well, dang, girl, are you in the scene? Because the way you talk, I said, you have no idea. It was the best 45 seconds of my life, because it was such a testimony to completing the assignment. And so I say that to just speak about what the workbook would do. It one of the things would be, what things have you left incomplete? Choose one to complete, and so I'm excited to really just do that work and just continue to expand my territory and be, in a circle with you girls as well, and I've just seen how it's gone from artists to executives, where I find myself doing team building exercises at Google. I'm like, I don't even know how I get here. But at the core of it, it is my job every day. And I pray before I go in with any client, because everybody needs something different. And I don't know what their origin is, but my job is to help you become available to yourself, to occupy your space, and to have a point of view that is so explicit that it cannot be hijacked. You know, whether you walk into meetings, whether you're on stage, whether you are just in conversation, the worst thing is to have regret in leaving and thinking that nobody saw who you were because you couldn't tap into what was there. And so I hope you just uncover a level of vulnerability that really gives you a freedom to stop asking permission to do what it is you do and let it just be a fact. Girl, I can talk all day. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there.
I love it. And that's a wrap. We could not end this podcast without thanking our amazing husbands.
Yes, thank you, Kwaku.
And thank you so much, Rich Daniel.
And our beautiful children, thank you, Sam and Dylan.
And thank you, Miss Sky Daniel.
And thank you to all of you great girlfriends for trusting us as your go-to source for everything life, love, and laughter.
You can check us out on our social, on Instagram,
The Great Girlfriends,
on Twitter,
_Great GFS,
and on Facebook,
The Great Girlfriends.
And please make sure that you join our Facebook group, which is over 16,000 women strong.
Absolutely. And make sure you listen every single Wednesday on iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Bean, Podcast Republic, Google Play, and every other podcasting service.
Absolutely.
Be sure to post your questions, share with your friends. Keep listening and keep being a great girlfriend. I'm Sybil.
And I'm Brandon.
And we're signing off.
Peace.
Peace.